The ending I'm going to tell you is 100% sure shot. Not because of leaks or theories, but because that's how Duffer Brothers write endings. Most people call Kali a mistake, a detour in season 2, but that mistake is now the most important piece of Elle's character arc in volume 2 of season 5. Stranger Things doesn't need twist. It ends with finishing the character arcs, and once you see which characters' arcs are unresolved, you will understand which will survive, which will die heroic, and whose death will go for nothing. And this isn't about predicting the end. This is about understanding how the story has gone till now. Sometimes the coldest characters are written in silence, and Volume 1 proves that. Will was always read as a weak character, not because he was weak, because he was kept in vulnerable spaces by Duffer Brothers. But Volume 1 speaks out loud something different, that he is not vulnerable, but Will's arc is about resilience, about redefining himself not through some sympathy, trauma, or fear, but through the people who love him. For the first time, show gives us undeniable blunt statement that Will isn't just someone who things happen to. He's someone chooses who he is. Will's unfinished arc isn't about suffering anymore. It's about stopping before something happens. The lie Will told about the painting, naming on Elle instead of himself, still hasn't been resolved. And I don't think it will be resolved the way people expect it to be. Not like a confrontation, not like a confession, but more like how Hopper and Mike got their arcs resolved after like season 3. Handled on the side while the story moves on. Will gets its clarity, Mike understands what he meant, and Elle doesn't lose either of them. The resolution matters, but it isn't the point. Growth is. Now let's talk about someone who is behind all of this. The reason we care about Will, the reason we care for all the characters in Stranger Things. And the reason we care for Will, every other character in Stranger Things, is due to Vecna. Vecna isn't just a villain, he is the emotional center of the conflict currently in Volume 1. And the biggest clue of something very small that most people just brush past is that Vecna is afraid of Cave, and that fear matters. Because a villain who is feeding on trauma and fear still have his own trauma. Because Vecna isn't just monster or nature, he's a human first, rejected and shared by pain, and then becomes the monster. That doesn't mean redemption. There is no redemption here. But that does mean understanding. And Stranger Things has always cared about understanding the pain than excusing it. And if the mind fear theory comes out to be true, if Henry was influenced, shaped, and amplified by something else, that doesn't just erase what he is, because we already know he has a past. Max saw it. We have seen how fear, control, isolation is constant across various characters of Stranger Things. Vecna matters not because he's evil, but because he mirrors the same emotional wounds the show has explored since season 1. But what if I say we have seen a similar character like Vecna, dark inside the mind, without the powers, and they got the redemption. That character is Max. In her head, Max was never innocent. Her anger, her resentment, her wishing for Billy's death. The difference is Max don't get the powers and she got the guilt. And that guilt is what we see in season 4. We saw her near Billy's grave, accepting her flaws and being vulnerable. The shame, the relief that never really came. And then in season 4, when Max writes letter to everyone because she thinks she might die, that's not heroism. That's acceptance of emotional responsibility. That's why we love Max now. Not because she's strong, but because she faced who she was. And even then, her arc isn't complete. The emotional cost hasn't been paid off. The relief hasn't arrived. And that's why I think Max getting out of Vecna's mind matters. Not as some miracle recovery, but as closure. A moment where she finally understands that she is not the problem. Never was. This isn't just about Will, Max, or Vecna anymore. The real issue is something Stranger Things has been avoiding till now. That problem is Kali's arc. Kali represents something that Stranger Things introduced and avoided for a long time now. She shows Elle a completely different path with vengeance, where she doesn't owe anything for this world and she do what she wants and what she feels is right. For the pain that never got the justice. And then she disappears. Dr. Kai having her and also asking Hop that what makes Elle special, that question matters. Because Kali is the proof that powers isn't the only thing that defines Elle. Kali tells Elle the one thing that no one else ever told her, that she doesn't owe anything to this world. For the first time, Elle is offered a relationship where she is not expected of anything in return. No responsibility, no destiny, just choice. Kali doesn't tell her to do this or that, even though she uses her for her personal acts, she gives her paths. And that question, that what Elle would do if no one is asking her to save them, is the real stake of season 5. The show has already told how it treats death, and if you notice the patterns, the ending is unavoidable. Stranger Things has always given heroic deaths, not heroic in loud sense, but sacrifices with awareness. When the sacrificing character knows that they are going to die and they actually want to live, they actually want to love, and choosing to show that love even when it isn't fully understood and notice the pattern. The show builds the side characters, making us sit with them and then ask for the sacrifice. That's how Bob dies, Eddie dies, and Billy too. And here's the important part, that Volume 1 didn't introduce any new characters. And that's why I can say confidently that these 3 characters will be safe, and they are Mike, Elle, and Will. Not because they are safe, but their arcs aren't resolved yet. And that's why they're not going to die. And now let's talk about characters that people keep naming and why some of them make sense and some don't make any sense. Will's ending is tied to Joyce and Jonathan, not partially, fundamentally. And between Jonathan and Steve, Jonathan has way more chance of dying. Because Steve's death is heroic on paper, because Steve is careless about himself, he's like always doing the dangerous things, like he's the one who has to do it, and that doesn't make his death heroic. But whereas on the other side, Jonathan wants to live. He wants future, he wants Nancy safe, he sees a future with her, and that's why his sacrifice would make him heroic. Especially if it's for saving Nancy. And yes, it also builds Nancy as someone who carries a spin-off show of Stranger Things if Netflix is planning it. Hopper is different. Hopper doesn't need another heroic death. Already we saw his emotional closure in Volume 1 point towards something worse, a death in vain. And that's exactly why it would hurt more. Lucas and Dustin aren't safe as the people think they are. But they are also not obvious sacrifices. Lucas's arc is still tied with Max, and love, memory, and music are the only things still that breaks the grip of Upside Down. Max needs relief more than trauma, which means Lucas is at risk, but Duffers won't pile it on Max. But that doesn't mean that he is not in risk, but it will not cross the line. And the same is applied for Dustin. His arc is still tied with Eddie. Now it is anchored by Steve. Steve keeps Dustin grounded, which makes him safe emotionally, even if the world around him isn't. One more thing that people aren't saying out loud, that Duffer Brothers love to kill side characters more than the main characters. You don't break the spine of the story, but you still leave a scar. That's why danger shifted to less narratively important characters but high emotional presence. Robin, Vicky, Erica, Derek, even Nancy, all these characters would come into that. And Kali. These deaths will be shocking, but they wouldn't collapse the whole story or lore. Just see at the character Derek. In very little time, the writing made us care for that character, not because of the plot, but because of the human moments. And that's Stranger Things classic. They build the character with affection and remove it quietly, without a warning and leaves us with a wound. And if Duffer Brothers decides to just leave the main lead characters alive, then this is most probably how they are going to end and hurt us. Not by erasing heroes, but by proving that survival costs something. And that is not shock, it's consequence. Stranger Things doesn't ask us who dies, it asks us who lives and has to carry it. What you just saw wasn't a leak, a prediction, or a theory. It was a breakdown of how Stranger Things actually finishes the stories through character arcs. This is how I read the story. If it added something to your way of interpreting things, you can like the video, or you have something different, put it down in the comments. And I have done a full video on Piler, and it is directly connected to this one. See you there.